Okay. We'll go ahead and call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order for the Isanti City Council. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Doing a roll call, we have all members present. Do we have any public comment? Not at this time. Let's see, we'll move on to, let's start with E7. So the cat regulation continued discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we did have the previous discussion at Committee of the Whole on what other cities, what they do for regulation of cat and specifically feral cats that are roaming within the city. What we found out at the last meeting is some cities' city code did not exactly meet what their practice was doing. So Ms. Strand did reach out to all the cities on the list, and you do have a list before you of about 10 or so different cities. And really, ultimately, what we found is no city does anything unless they have their own or contracted with an animal shelter. Are they actually doing anything with cats?
So I know, for Jeff, you maybe, if you haven't been watching meetings, this is something I brought up, and Luke has told me that people are upset we're even talking about this, but when a resident had brought up this concern, he had the neighbor's cats, we've got like 7 cats that are going and sitting on the sidewalk, and they're sitting on the road, and I used to live over there too, so I've seen it firsthand. But the cats are getting in his trash cans, and I mean, I personally had cats peeing on my plants out front of the house, and so I mean, it is definitely a problem in this particular area of town. And he wanted to know, well, what can I do about it? I mean, they're getting in my trash, they're causing problems. I mean, and I think anybody that would be irritated that we're even discussing it would also be irritated if there was cats getting in their trash and peeing on their stuff. So, I think it's what I thought was probably looked like maybe the best solution out of the ones that are listed there was the residents trap their own cats, and then the city will pick them up and bring them to a humane society. Is there a humane society near us that we could partner with, and is that something that Jed could do as code enforcement? Would, you know what I mean?
It is not something that the city has reached out to contract with any. There are some animal shelters, one of them might being Rough Start Rescue, that residents could work with them to take a cat, depending on if that it's already trapped and that they have it. That would be something that our recommendation would be that homeowner go to Rough Start Rescue and work with them.
And they would take a cat though if somebody had trapped it, and maybe that's, I can just tell, and there's nothing that we would need to do to allow a resident to trap cats on their property, right? So we can
No,
do that.
they would perform TNR, so trap, neuter, and then release.
Okay.
But that's the best method of dealing with a cat.
Where do they release them?
overpopulation. The cats will find their way back home.
They
So
just-
it's better for them just to be neutered and spayed and returned back there, so they're not increasing the colony. So that's
Okay.
the way, that's what they'll do at every shelter you'll find.
Well, but I mean, they're gonna bring them back to where they caught them, and
Yep.
then, okay.
Yes.
I guess I like St. Cloud's. I mean, they're not really doing anything about it, but it's an option for people.
Again, that's another city that contracts with the Humane
Yeah.
Society.
I think the closest humane society we have is in Andover or Anoka. It's right off of 10.
Well, how many cats can you have? Like, is there any city code on that?
We do not have a city ordinance on the number of cats you can have.
And I'm okay, if you wanna have 100 cats in your house or on your property, that's more power to you, but I mean, I'm just, if your cat's on the neighbor's property,
Yeah.
that's where I have an issue, you know?
I think if the residents have the option to trap them and do something, at least have a little bit of, if my
Yeah,
neighbor had a
right,
bunch of
mhm.
cats and they were messing up my stuff, it'd be nice to be able to trap them and at least get them neutered so that they're not just reproducing. I mean, if that's possible, it seems like the most reasonable.
If we have to throw money at this in any way, I could see maybe buying 5 traps and letting residents use them for free with a ID and return them within X amount of days or something like that. I mean, it has to be, it's on the resident.
Yeah, I would say it's on the resident.
Yeah, that's what I would probably say that too.
I don't,
I mean, when we first looked at this, what we had been shown was other cities were doing something
Yeah.
about it. Well, in reality, nobody's doing anything about it, you know, I mean,
and I had 2 phone calls from people that said if, they'd be real disappointed if we put any money into
Yeah.
cats, which I
No.
totally
Yeah.
understand.
Once you start, it really starts growing from there.
Yeah, money
Well, it's
spending,
always a little
nickel and
tweaks
dime.
and, yeah, and then all of a sudden you have a pretty large item.
well, we do have animal control. I mean,
Yeah.
that for dogs, I mean, for other things, we do that. So
But
it's
it's
not, it's not like some insane thing that I was bringing it up to say, what can we do
Oh,
about
yeah.
these cats that are digging into this guy's garbage cans? I mean, none of us would want that. So, I mean, I wasn't talking about spending a whole bunch of money. I was just
No.
wondering if we could add it to our already existing, you know, animal control program, but they don't do that, and it doesn't look like any cities really do. So I'll just tell him that we did a lot of research and talked about it, and the best thing for him to do is trap the cat, and
Has he talked to his neighbor?
I don't think he has talked to her, so and I did mention that too, that maybe the best thing to do would be to talk to your neighbor, but I'll tell him that we've done our research and kind of tell him what we found, and tell him that probably the best option would be to trap it and either, you know, release it outside of town or bring it back to his neighbor and ask him to keep it in their yard or bring it to the Humane Society, so, or Rough Start Rescue, you said. Okay. All right, well, that takes care of that. Moving on to E8, Homeowner Association Development Discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this was brought up for discussion at the October 17th Committee of the Whole and was asked to be brought back for further discussion from Councilmember Merrill. Really, the gist of this topic was that we do need to allow homeowners associations by state statute, but we could put restrictions on it to make sure that they, specifically with streets and water sewer infrastructure, were held to city standards like other developments. So this is just to allow for continued discussion.
Yeah, so this one, I mean, Jeff, you weren't here, but I don't know if you saw when we had all the residents come in from HOA, the older folks, and they were upset because nobody takes care of their street, and the city can't take care of it because it's not built to city standards, so we legally can't. And there was a lot of people here, and it kind of irked me because, you know, you could have a developer that, just to try and save money, they screw over people that move into HOAs. So I wanted to at least require HOAs to meet standard city codes so that if anything does ever happen, or if there's any sort of situation, like say if, I mean, I don't know, just any sort of situation, I'd rather have some sort of ability for the city to actually help if possible. So I think we should require them all to meet city code for anything infrastructure related. Water, sewer, streets, signage. And I don't think it seems too out of hand. I would guess most cities do that. What's that?
It makes sense. Yeah, you can't turn off one person's water and then. everybody
That
else-
too.
That's
Yeah.
the only thing that I would say we would have to restrict them to, is to make sure they all have their own separate water source, so the city can determine if they don't pay the water bill to shut it off without shutting off everybody. As for the streets go, when you're young and you buy into an HOA and you live there, and all of a sudden you retire, and all of a sudden now you want the city to come out, the HOA fails or whatever, that's on the people that bought the house for property in the HOAs. I still think, I don't disagree with, I think the water rights need to be separate metered. I wish I would've known about that development, because I would've argued up and down about that they should've had their own water source. Cause it's a son of a gun to have to do work on somebody's property when you gotta shut down a whole flippin' street. And it's logistic nightmare, because you gotta coordinate with the city to come out and shut it off, and then you gotta make sure you know if everybody's notified, that's gonna be off from this time to that time. It's a pain. But as far as the streets go, like I said, you're setting double standards when you tell people they can do whatever they want on their property, and you're telling a developer he can't.
Well, I think it's different. Developers,
No,
they'll
it's
see
not.
the low-hanging fruit and try and take it versus,
They're not taking the hanging fruit. You choose to buy in an HOA. You've chosen to buy into it. You knew it was an HOA.
but people
I
aren't
don't
gonna
dis-
know.
Yes, you do know. It's up in the contract up front that you pay X amount of dollars
right.
for this and this and this. HOAs are a great thing for somebody that does not want to mow grass,
Yes.
shovel snow, pay for fixing their siding, pay for re-roofing, paying for all these things. But it's not up to me to tell them that they can or can't be in an HOA.
Right.
That's your choice to make when you purchase it.
I
The
understand
only
that.
thing that I can say that I would say they have to do up front. I don't disagree with you. They should put the streets in it because it's a matter of when it does fail, now they can handle this. That's not my fault. That's not anybody's up here's fault. You chose to buy into an HOA.
How are they supposed to know that these things aren't built up to standard code?
The streets are, they go into it, they don't have to worry about city plow trucks coming through. They have an independent pump company that
You're
comes in
right.
and plows and shovels their driveways and sidewalks.
Right.
Comes out and mows their grass and does everything for them. They also have a set of rules that they can follow about having pets, other things.
I
Pets can't.
understand the HOA stuff, but I'm
But
saying.
it's, you know that, because you signed that contract. You sign it. If you don't read it, that's not on anybody up here, or anybody in the city staff, or anybody. That's up to you when you purchase that.
Steve, let me ask you one question. If you were to buy a house there, would you think that the water was not on separate
That's
shut-offs?
what I
Okay, there's a
said.
lot of little intricacies like that.
That's-
The street width, the lighting, there's all sorts of things that nobody up here is gonna know everything about everything. Even if I went in to buy a HOA house, I know quite a bit about city happenings and how stuff works, and I still wouldn't know everything. There's gonna be little things like that, and that's why
But
you have a city
that's why
code.
I said that we need to, obviously, the sewer and water is a big issue.
That's just one small
That's,
example.
that is the single issue,
that you
in
know
my
of.
opinion.
Okay,
You know when you buy into an HOA, every city around, the city of Isani doesn't do it, but every private street on an HOA or every private street has a different color street sign. Where everybody else is green, the privates are blue. You drive by it and you see a blue street sign, you know that's a private street. Plain and simple.
so do HOAs have to meet code for other city things, like the amount of vehicles in the driveway or any of that stuff? I mean, they're in the city limits, why would they not have to meet city code? It doesn't really make sense to me.
They do have to meet zoning code for those things, but oftentimes they're more restrictive.
Right,
So that's often why people choose to live in an HOA, is because they do have higher restrictions or only allow seniors to live there or things like that.
so we're
Such
telling
as
them
like the
that,
building, like allowing how many garages and things like that, yes, they do have to abide by city code.
okay, so why don't they have to abide by, I mean, you'd think that you should have to abide by city code for basic infrastructure, which everybody drives through, the city residents see. I mean, I don't understand,
They do often have private roads if they are
but
smaller.
not always, right?
But it's up to their HOA to decide that. And they are required to sign the HOA documents at closing when the home is sold. So when they're buying their house, yep, it is on their closing documents, so recorded.
But does it,
The-
I mean, does
the
it
one-
say if it's out of city compliance with anything? I mean, that's
No, it
not
doesn't
something
say
that's gonna be
that.
written.
It doesn't say that, but when a developer comes to the plan commission with their site plan, it is at that time that the plan commission would have discretion to make a recommendation to city council to have everything meet city standards for road and infrastructure.
That's
As
if
was-
council
As was
thinks
mentioned
about
before,
it.
is council has a discretion to have them accept what they're proposing or to have them raise it up to city standards.
But
In the
that's-
past, they've had discretion and not required it.
I mean, I think there's a lot of human error there. You could have situations where maybe the five of us up here don't think about something and the developer kind of sneaks something in to try and save themselves money to make more money. I don't think it's fair to people that live in this community. If you buy a HOA, you would expect that the sewer, the streets, all the basic infrastructure are up to general city code. I don't think I don't know how you would ever think that's okay to not be up to city code on everything, as far as infrastructure especially. So, I mean, could we take a vote on it? I know it's not a voting item, but,
Well, so here, and let me just kind of give my 2 cents on this, and I just think that it should be done more on a case-by-case basis, and I do agree with Steve on that, I mean, if you're giving the individual residents the ability to do what they want on their own property, then I think that somebody that's looking to develop a piece of property and do a homeowners association should have that same option to use their property how they see fit. So, now, does that mean that we need to just accept every little crappy idea that comes in? No, but right now, the way that everything is written, we have the ability to say, no, we're not gonna accept that, or we will accept that, or I just think it gives us more flexibility in that, you know, okay, if there's a certain project where they need a road to be small enough so that they can fit the right number of houses in to make that project happen in the first place, well, we may be more flexible on that because we'd like to get that tax base coming in too, and we'd like to get those homes built, and, you know, I mean, there, a lot of those times, just like Stephanie said, they might be folk, you know, people that are older that are looking to move into some of these homes, and like Steve said, I mean, you have, the grass is mowed, you know, everything's plowed, whatever, but the issue, like you're saying, is when they fail, of course, then who cleans up the mess, and well, I mean, but they're buying into that when they do it, and they're signing off that, yes, I understand that I'm participating in this, so.
I don't think
I
most
just-
people know, though, that's the,
Well, but then that's
It
on them and
sucks,
their real
yeah.
estate agent. Steve's right about that too, is that it's not our fault to make them know. I mean, they gotta do their due diligence and,
And the one that you're talking about, those elderly people, that really wasn't an HOA. The developer made it a private street because he wanted to put a cul-de-sac in it, but it wouldn't work. So he made it a private street so he could do what he wanted. So there's, when you do that, you're changing the whole gamut of things. And when she bought in there originally, it wasn't a problem. Now she's aging. I'm not putting the blame on her, but that's just the way it is.
there was, I mean, there was
yeah, I mean, I
20
wish we could
people
do
in
something
here.
about that too.
I just,
but-
you know, if you're building a house, you have to meet city code unless you get a variance. So why shouldn't developers have to meet standard code? And if they want a variance, then they have to come in, because then you're not leaving it up to all five of us to think of every single thing. They should have to meet city code, and then if they need a variance for whatever reason, then they come in and ask, just like any other business, just like any other house. I mean, I don't understand why.
That is the process of the PUD, though. The planned unit development is to allow for some flexibility, but also we do compare it to the basic city standards. So that's what happens
Here's maybe
through
a
the
different,
process.
a different way to think about this. And what stops us from taking over the plowing on that street? Is it city code that,
They said it's not possible for the plow truck, it's too small. I mean, I'm
Well,
not,
but
I don't
we
wanna
do-
take it over.
we do have,
If we were to plow it with a pickup truck and a straight blade,
yeah,
I mean, you can kind of get in anywhere, right? I think that that would just be a new precedence that the city would be taking on, and I don't know how you would
I don't,
not
yeah.
take on the plowing for every private road in HOA if you were gonna do it for some.
I don't want that. What I want is for people to be buying a house where the infrastructure is set up the way it should be. For future, because it's just unfair for someone that doesn't know construction or doesn't know all the ins and outs, or their realtor sucks, or, I mean, you're leaving the hands in a developer whose main goal is to make money. Their main goal is to make money. If they can skim $1,000 off every property, they're gonna do it. That's their main goal, is to make money. We need to protect the residents, not the developer.
there won't be any residents if there's nobody to build.
They'll still build.
To do the development. They have to be motivated by money, otherwise you don't
Oh,
get
right, of
anything.
course,
You-
of
you-
course.
You have to have incentive for them, so, but if you don't wanna take over the road, then what does it matter if they're up to the city?
Just, I mean, okay, so we have the roads
So
and the sewers
even
and
if the
water.
homeowners association fails, your goal isn't to take that on and fix that problem, right? So then what's the point? I mean, why are we having this conversation, you know
So
what
the
I mean?
infrastructure's set up right, like the water stuff
Right,
and sewer
but
stuff.
even then, you're still
streets.
not going to take over the road?
No, but I wanna make sure it's set up right for people. I mean, just the example of the water shut-offs, I mean, we could just do that, that's fine, but what about when something else comes up? What if electrical's different? I don't know all the intricacies of HOAs, I don't think anybody here does, so
I'm gonna be honest with you, that water situation is a rarity, because every HOA, every unit has its own disconnect in it.
But it
Every one that
happened.
I've worked on has its own disconnect, own meter in each unit. So that was a rarity. How that got pushed through, I haven't got a clue, but I would have never allowed, I would have argued for hours and hours and hours on end. Mr. Becker even said, he suggested it was a bad idea.
But what if it never came
It
up?
was some of staff that did not agree with that. However, it was, for the example that Mayor Gordon used, is that development would not have happened because of the cost to cut open the street to put the water in there. It was purely on the dollars and cents of making or breaking a development.
How many homes did we get built because of that? You know, I mean, because of making that exception.
I guess around 15 for the full development there, but
Yeah,
I'd
right. I
have to
mean,
look it up.
that's-
But now it
100%.
inconveniences every house if one person has to have water worked
Yeah, I
on, the
mean,
whole
from-
neighborhood's out.
from time to time, it does
Yeah.
inconvenience them, but I bet you all those people are glad to have their house.
But another solution in that is go to the HOA and say, now that we cannot shut these units off individually, you are gonna be responsible, you're gonna receive this water bill, it's not one individual. And it's up to them to decide. And if that HOA, all of a sudden, that board, because they elect officials on HOA
Right,
boards.
yep.
And all of a sudden, their water's gonna get shut off because XYZ unit didn't pay their water bill. Now, they're gonna be more responsible. What they'll end up doing is turn around and see what the average billing is on the water per month, and they're gonna extend that into their HOA that they pay every month. They pay monthly to that, and it could be from $120 to $500 and some dollars a month to be part of an HOA. It's not just given to them.
I
They
know,
pay that
what
monthly.
HOAs are, Steve. My grandma lives in one. I'm familiar with them, but
But so,
this part is
so,
scary.
so in that situation, there is a way around it, plain and simple. Go back to the HOA and say, okay, this is one water bill meter use, we can't shut off everybody, so this is the way it is. If it doesn't get paid monthly by the HOA, we shut the water off.
Do HOAs fail? Do they ever fail?
Yes, often.
Some do,
Well, then, whose it's gonna end up
The
being the
city.
city's responsibility,
Not-
so we
no,
should keep them
no.
under
The
control.
homeowners take it over. I
the
mean, there
homeowners
has-
take it over.
Homeowners?
They have not, the city would have to accept it to get it.
Okay.
We have not accepted any. We've been requested, take over a street, take over this, take over. No, we haven't taken it over.
And that's
Or
my, that's
similar
my
to-
It
point is
doesn't
that.
default to the city to make us
Right.
liable
I
for
understand.
what they
Even,
want.
even if you're trying to fix that problem, I mean, it's still not a problem that you actually wanna take on.
I just don't want somebody to
Even
get
if they
screwed
do
when they buy a
fail,
house.
you know. Well, and I get where you're coming from. But I mean, my only point too is that, well, not my only point, but I mean, another point is that any council in the future, even if you were to say now that we're gonna make these standards apply to every HOA, any
could
council in
change
the
it, right.
future could just say, well, we're gonna get rid of that because we wanna get this project done. So, I mean, it's still,
Or you just give them a variance, just like any other business or house that comes in and they want something different,
Yeah.
you give them a variance.
sure, but I mean,
I think it's,
technically, you're supposed to have a reason to give a variance, but that's a hardship, or it's, which I guess
It would
not
be.
being, not being able to do the project would be a hardship, but.
Just like that,
What'd you
right
say?
off of,
It's not economical hardships, actually.
Well, you're right, yeah, that
The
wouldn't
but-
count.
It's the but-for test of whether or not the project would happen without it is often.
so like over here on Whiskey on the north side of 5, there's a HOA in there. I know one, because I rented in there. I couldn't park my company van in my driveway because they didn't allow it. And I wasn't thrilled about that because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in there. Where do I park it? Fortunately, I have a friend that I could park it in his shop. But that's their restrictions. So their restrictions are more stringent than the cities. So my dogs, I got complaints because they go out and pee in the yard. Oh, the grass is turning brown, so now I gotta go out and reseed the yard to get the grass back up. There's a lot of restrictions
Right.
in there.
So with that, you'd
so-
almost-
Well, here,
But that's
guys,
the
let's-
choice you make.
Let's, let everybody chew on that a little bit, and when we reopen the committee of the whole, let's go right back to that. And then if you wanna go ahead, and we can go right down the line, and, cause last time this was 2-2, and so Jeff, you're the one that's got the pressure on you, okay? All right, so if I can get a motion to recess committee of the whole for right now?
motion to recess.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilman Merrill and a second from Councilman Heeman to recess committee of the whole. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.